Hello everyone, and welcome. It's Sophia here, and I have a story to tell you. One of those little everyday moments that somehow stick with you. You know those mornings when you're rushing, trying to get everything done before heading out the door? Well, this morning was one of those mornings, but with a twist. I was finally ready, dressed, and feeling pretty good about making it out on time. I grabbed my steaming cup of tea, took a deep, satisfied breath, and, you will not believe what happened next. I spilled it, all down my crisp, clean shirt. Honestly, it felt like time stopped for a moment. All that rushing, all that planning, and now this. I just stood there, staring at the spreading stain, a mixture of frustration and amusement bubbling up inside me. It was a surprisingly calming moment amidst the chaos. It reminded me that sometimes, things just happen, and you just have to roll with the punches. So, let's begin our exciting journey of English improvement together, finding the soothing moments even in the spills and splashes of everyday life. And remember, new videos are released daily, focusing on English speaking and listening skills to help you improve and enjoy your learning journey. So, you know how sometimes you just need a day to escape? A day to just wander and soak things in? Well, last Saturday, that was me. I felt this pull, this almost magnetic tug, towards the local farmer's market. It's one of those hidden gems, tucked away on a cobblestone street just outside the city center. I hadn't been in ages, honestly, probably not since last summer. Life, you know, it just gets in the way. Anyway, I threw on a comfy sweater, the kind that feels like a hug, and grabbed my oversized canvas bag. I was picturing overflowing baskets of ripe peaches, the smell of fresh bread, maybe even a little folk music in the air. You know, the whole shebang. And let me tell you, it didn't disappoint. The moment I turned the corner onto the street, I was hit with this vibrant wave of colors. Deep reds of juicy tomatoes, the sunny yellows of summer squash, greens so bright they almost hurt your eyes. It was like walking into a living painting. And the air, oh, the air. It was thick with the scent of ripe berries and freshly baked pastries. There was this underlying earthiness too, from the piles of potatoes and onions, that grounded everything. It was intoxicating. I wandered past a stall piled high with honey. Different shades, different textures, it was mesmerizing. I chatted with the beekeeper, this older gentleman with twinkling eyes, about the different floral notes in each jar. He let me sample a spoonful of wildflower honey, and it was divine. So light, so floral, with this almost citrusy tang. I ended up buying a small jar, of course. How could I resist? Next, I stumbled upon a mountain of peaches. I mean, a asterisk mountain. They were perfectly ripe, their fuzzy skin practically glowing in the sunlight. I picked one up, gently cupping it in my hand. It was heavy, soft, and gave off the sweetest, most intoxicating aroma. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath, instantly transported back to childhood summers, eating peaches warm from the sun in my grandmother's garden. Remember those days? Carefree, sun-drenched, with the taste of sweet, sticky juice running down your chin. I had to have some. I bought a whole bag, already dreaming of peach cobbler and maybe even some homemade peach jam. The market was buzzing with activity. People chatting, laughing, haggling over prices. Kids darted between stalls, their eyes wide with wonder. There was this palpable sense of community, of connection. It was heartwarming, you know, to see people engaging with each other, supporting local farmers, appreciating the simple things. I stopped at a stall selling handmade soaps. They were shaped like little flowers and animals, and the scents were incredible: lavender, rosemary, peppermint. I couldn't resist buying a little bee-shaped soap, because, well, bees and honey. It just felt right. It smelled like sunshine and wildflowers. Then, guess what happened? I bumped into Mrs. Henderson, my old history teacher from high school. I hadn't seen her in years. She looked exactly the same, still with that mischievous twinkle in her eyes. We chatted for a while, catching up on life, reminiscing about old times. It was so unexpected, so lovely. It's funny how these chance encounters can brighten your day, isn't it? I continued my wanderings, stopping at a stall selling freshly baked bread. The smell was heavenly, warm, yeasty, with a hint of something sweet. I bought a loaf of sourdough, its crust perfectly golden and crisp. I could already imagine slicing it thick, slathering it with butter, and enjoying it with a bowl of steaming soup, comfort food at its finest. As I walked, I noticed a small crowd gathered around a musician. He was playing a mellow tune on an acoustic guitar, his voice soft and soulful. I found myself drawn in, swaying to the rhythm. The music filled the air, weaving its way through the stalls and the chatter, creating this magical atmosphere. It was just perfect. I sat on a nearby bench, letting the music wash over me, watching the people go by. I felt so content. It was like the world had slowed down, and I was finally able to breathe. Do you ever have those moments where you just feel completely present, completely at peace? I spent the rest of the afternoon meandering through the stalls, discovering little treasures. I found a vintage teacup with delicate floral patterns, a hand-knit scarf in the most beautiful shade of emerald green, and a small potted herb plant that I'd been wanting for ages. By the time I started heading home, the sun was beginning to set, casting a warm golden glow over everything. My bag was heavy with my purchases, and my heart was full. It was more than just a trip to the farmer's market, it was an experience. A reminder to slow down, to appreciate the simple things, to connect with the community. Walking back, the scent of fresh bread still clinging to my clothes, I realized how much I needed that day. It was a day of sensory delights, of unexpected encounters, of simple pleasures. It was a day that nourished my soul. You know, sometimes we get so caught up in the hustle and bustle of everyday life that we forget to appreciate the beauty that surrounds us. We forget to take the time to wander, to explore, to connect. The farmer's market reminded me of that. It reminded me of the importance of slowing down, of savoring the moment, of appreciating the simple things. And honestly, I think we all need a little more of that in our lives. Don't you? Okay, so, you know how sometimes you just need a day to escape? A day where you're not rushing, not stressed, just present? Well, last Saturday was exactly that for me. I decided, spur of the moment, to explore the local farmers' markets. Not just one, oh no, I was on a mission. A farmer's market crawl asterisk, if you will. And let me tell you, it was an adventure. It all started with that glorious morning light streaming through my window. You know, the kind that makes your houseplants look extra vibrant? That kind of light. I woke up feeling lighter, too. Like a fluffy pancake, ready to soak up all the goodness the day had to offer. So, I brewed a giant mug of cinnamon tea. The kind with actual cinnamon sticks in it, because why not be extra? And started planning my route. First stop, the little market tucked away behind the old train station. It's tiny, honestly, barely a handful of stalls, but it has this amazing energy. The air buzzed with the low hum of conversations, the clang of coins, the rustling of canvas bags. And the smells? Oh, the smells. Ripe peaches, still warm from the sun, mingled with the earthy aroma of freshly dug potatoes and the sweet, almost spicy scent of homemade bread. I felt like I'd walked into a sensory explosion. I immediately gravitated towards a stall overflowing with vibrant wildflowers. The colors, deep purples, fiery oranges, sunshine yellows, it was like a painter's palette exploded right there. I chatted with the woman selling them. A sweet lady with dirt under her fingernails and a smile as warm as the summer sun. She told me about her garden, about how she talks to her flowers every morning, and, you won't believe this, she even let me help her arrange a bouquet. It felt so grounding, you know? Like connecting with something real, something beyond the screen and the noise of everyday life. Next, I stumbled upon a stall piled high with heirloom tomatoes. I'm talking colors I'd never even seen on a tomato before, deep indigo, almost black, pale green streaked with yellow, vibrant orange with pink swirls. They looked like jewels, honestly. I ended up buying a mix, completely forgetting I had no real plan for them. But isn't that the beauty of these markets? You just get swept up in the moment, the abundance of it all. My little canvas bag started to fill up. A loaf of sourdough bread still warm from the oven. A jar of local honey, a handful of fragrant herbs, a small block of goat cheese wrapped in parchment paper. It was more than just groceries, it Felt like collecting little pieces of the community, little pieces of the earth. Stop number 2 was the bigger market, the one downtown. This one's a whole different vibe. Live music, food trucks, crafts, clothes. It's a proper festival atmosphere. I grabbed a steaming cup of chai latte and wandered, letting myself get lost in the crowd. There was a guy playing the didgeridoo, another making intricate wire sculptures, a woman selling hand-dyed silk scarves that shimmered in the sunlight. It was overwhelming, almost, but in the best possible way. I watched a little girl, no older than 5, mesmerized by a potter shaping clay on a spinning wheel. Her eyes, wide with wonder, reflected the same fascination. I felt watching the skilled hands at work. It reminded me of that childlike curiosity, that pure joy in discovering something new. And you know what? I think we lose a little bit of that as we grow up. We get so caught up in the routine, the to-do lists, that we forget to appreciate the simple magic around us. Guess what happened next? I almost tripped over a basket of peaches. Luckily, the farmer, a burly man with a booming laugh, caught me just in time. We ended up chatting about his orchard, about the different varieties of peaches he grows, about the unpredictable nature of weather and the challenges of farming. It was a humbling conversation, a reminder of the hard work and dedication that goes into the food we often take for granted. My final stop was a tiny market I'd never even heard of before. It was tucked away in a residential neighborhood, almost hidden. But it was a gem. Just a few stalls, mostly local families selling their homemade jams, pickles, and baked goods. I found myself chatting with an elderly woman who was selling the most incredible apple pie. We talked about her secret recipe, which, of course, she wouldn't reveal, about her grandchildren, about the changing seasons. It felt like talking to my own grandmother. By the time I got home, the sun was starting to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. My bags were overflowing, but my heart felt even fuller. I spread out my treasures on the kitchen counter. The misshapen tomatoes, the fragrant herbs, the crusty bread, the jars of jams and honey. It wasn't just food, it was a collection of stories, a tangible connection to my community, a reminder of the beauty in simple things. As I cooked dinner that night, using the ingredients I'd gathered throughout the day, I realized that the farmer's market crawl wasn't just about the food. It was about slowing down, connecting with people, appreciating the artistry and hard work behind every loaf of bread, every jar of jam, every bunch of wildflowers. It was about rediscovering that childlike wonder, that sense of community, that appreciation for the simple pleasures in life. And you know what? It was exactly what I needed. A day to escape, a day to connect, a day to remember what truly matters. And maybe, just maybe, a day to inspire you to do the same. Go explore your local markets. You might be surprised at what you discover. Hey everyone, learning a new language can feel like climbing a mountain, right? But you know what? The more you try, the closer you get to your dreams. Think about it. Every word you learn, every sentence you speak, it's a step forward, a step closer to fluency. It's like building a bridge, word by word, to connect with a whole new world. And trust me, that journey is incredibly rewarding. And speaking of speaking, I have a fun little practice idea for you. Narrating your daily routine. It's super easy to fit into your day. Imagine you're making breakfast. As you pour your coffee, you could say, "I'm pouring my coffee now. It smells delicious." While walking to work or school, describe what you see. It might feel a little silly at first, but it's a fantastic way to get comfortable speaking English without even realizing you're practicing. You know, something I've heard from a lot of learners is that they understand English pretty well, but introducing themselves to strangers can be a little nerve-wracking. Do you also find yourself understanding what others say in English, but hesitate when it's your turn to speak? It's totally understandable. Stepping outside your comfort zone is challenging, but each time you do, you gain a little more confidence. You're not alone in this, we all feel that way sometimes. And you know what? This reminds me of something I tried a while back. Honestly, it felt like magic. Have you ever recorded your own voice speaking English? I remember the first time I did it, I was so nervous. But listening back really helped me pinpoint areas I could improve. It's like having your own personal language coach. What about you? Share your experiences in the comments below. I'd love to hear them. Okay, so grab a cuppa, get comfy, because I have a story to tell you. It's about a day that started out ordinary, just a Saturday with nothing much planned, but ended up being, well, kind of magical. It was a day exploring local history, and I mean really exploring. I'd been living in this little town, Oakhaven, for about a year, and I felt like I still barely knew it. It's one of those places that seems sleepy on the surface, but you can sense layers underneath, whispers of the past. So, I decided, enough with the surface. I was going to dig deeper. My first stop? The Oakhaven Historical Society. Now, picture this. A tiny, slightly dusty building tucked between a bustling bakery, the smell of fresh bread, and a rather intimidating antique shop. I almost walked past it. The sign was this faded, hand-painted thing that read, Oakhaven, yesterday and today. Charming, right? Inside, it was even more quaint. Sunbeams streamed through the lace-curtained windows, illuminating rows and rows of overflowing bookshelves. The air smelled of old paper and something vaguely floral, maybe potpourri? A sweet, elderly lady with a name tag that read, Agnes, greeted me. She had these bright, curious eyes behind thick-rimmed glasses. We got to chatting, and, wouldn't you know it, Agnes was a walking encyclopedia of Oakhaven history. I told her I wanted to really experience the town's past, not just read about it. And she lit up. She pulled out this ancient, leather-bound map, its edges frayed with age. This, she declared, her voice hushed with reverence, is the original town charter. From 1788. 1788. Can you imagine? I was holding something older than America itself. Agnes pointed to a network of faded lines and symbols. These, she explained, tracing her finger across the brittle parchment, are the original roads, the first houses, the old mill. Much of it is gone now, of course, but some traces remain. If you follow this map, her eyes twinkled, you'll find Oakhaven's hidden heart. Hidden heart, that phrase just resonated. So, armed with the ancient map and Agnes's enthusiastic directions, which, let's be honest, were a little meandering, I set off. First, I headed to the old mill. Now, it wasn't a working mill anymore. It had been converted into a rather trendy art gallery. A little jarring, the juxtaposition of old and new, But inside, amidst the abstract paintings and sculptures, I found a small, dusty display case tucked in a corner. And there it was. The original millstone, worn smooth by decades of grinding grain. I touched it, ran my hand over the cool, smooth surface. It was like touching a piece of time. Next, following the faded lines on the map, I found myself walking down a narrow, overgrown path. The map called it Tanner's Lane. Agnes had mentioned that Oakhaven used to be a hub for leather tanning. Imagine the smell. I could almost smell the pungent aroma of tannins in the air, even though it was probably just my imagination. The lane led me to a small, crumbling stone wall, half hidden by ivy. All that remained of the tannery, Agnes had said. But standing there, amidst the quiet and the overgrowth, I could almost hear the echoes of activity, the clang of tools, the murmur of voices. My little adventure continued. I stumbled upon the remnants of the old town square, now just a grassy field bordered by modern houses. I sat there for a while, trying to picture the bustling market that Agnes described, the horse-drawn carriages, the women in long skirts, the men in top hats. It was strangely peaceful. Then, something unexpected happened. While I was sitting there, lost in my reverie, an old man with a weathered face and kind eyes approached me. He introduced himself as Mr. Henderson. Turns out, he'd grown up in Oakhaven, and he remembered stories his grandfather had told him, stories about the town's past. He pointed to a gnarled oak tree at the edge of the field. That tree, he said, his voice low and resonant, is older than any of us. It's seen everything. He proceeded to tell me stories, not the kind you find in history books, but personal stories, anecdotes about the people who had lived and loved and laughed and cried in this very spot. He told me about the town's first schoolteacher, a stern but fiercely dedicated woman named Miss Abigail, and about the blacksmith, a giant of a man with a gentle heart. He even pointed to the spot where, according to legend, two young lovers had eloped under the light of the harvest moon. It was amazing. Just listening to him, I felt like I was transported back in time. It wasn't just about dates and facts anymore, it was about real people, real lives. You know what I mean? Mr. Henderson eventually excused himself, leaving me there under the shade of the ancient oak. The sun was starting to set, casting long shadows across the field. And I realized something. History isn't just about dusty books and crumbling ruins. It's about the stories, the memories, the echoes of the past that linger in a place. My final stop, as the twilight deepened, was the old cemetery. Now, I know what you're thinking, creepy, right? But honestly, it wasn't. It was serene, almost peaceful. The headstones, weathered and moss-covered, told silent stories of lives lived. I found the grave of Miss Abigail, the schoolteacher Mr. Henderson had mentioned, and the blacksmiths, too. It felt strangely comforting, like connecting with them across time. As I walked back to my car, the streetlights casting a warm glow on the quiet streets, I thought about everything I had discovered. The hidden lane, the old millstone, the stories Mr. Henderson shared, the silent whispers of the cemetery. It was like Oakhaven had opened up to me, revealing its secrets, its soul. I hadn't just learned about its history, I'd felt it. And that's the thing, isn't it? Sometimes, we get so caught up in the hustle and bustle of our lives that we forget to look around, to appreciate the history that surrounds us. We walk past these silent witnesses to the past every day, oblivious to the stories they hold. But if we take the time to stop, to listen, to truly explore, we can discover something truly magical. We can connect with the past in a way that brings it alive, makes it real. And that, my friend, is a truly amazing experience. So, next time you have a free day, I encourage you to explore your own local history. You never know what treasures you might uncover, what stories you might hear, what connections you might make. You might even discover the hidden heart of your own town. And who knows, you might even find a bit of magic along the way. So, you know how sometimes you just need a day to yourself? A day where you can just breathe? Well, last Saturday was one of those days for me. I woke up feeling restless. Like I had 1,000 thoughts buzzing around in my head, but none of them were particularly helpful. I needed an escape, a quiet adventure, something different. And then it hit me. A library hop. Yes, a library hop. Like a pub crawl, but with books instead of beer. Don't laugh. It's a thing, or at least I made it a thing that day. There are 5 libraries within a reasonable driving radius of where I live, and I decided I was going to visit every single one. My first stop was the old Carnegie Library downtown. You know the type, majestic stone building, massive columns, the faint smell of old paper and dust motes dancing in the sunlight that streams through the tall windows. It's like stepping back in time. I love the quiet reverence in places like that. You can almost hear the whispers of all the stories that have passed through those walls. I spent a good hour just wandering the stacks, running my fingers along the spines. I found a first edition of a poetry book I'd loved in college, a total unexpected treasure. The pages were brittle and yellowed, but it held a certain magic, you know? I sat at one of those heavy, oak tables, the kind that makes a satisfying thud when you set your bag down, and flipped through it. There were even some handwritten notes in the margins. Someone, decades ago, had underlined their favorite lines, scribbled little thoughts and reactions. It felt like a connection to the past, a shared experience with someone I'd never meet. Isn't that amazing? Next up was the modern branch library near the university. Talk about a contrast. Sleek lines, glass walls, computers humming. A completely different vibe. It even had a little cafe inside. I grabbed a lukewarm latte. Honestly, library coffee is rarely great, is it? And browsed the graphic novel section. I'm a sucker for a good graphic novel. The art, the storytelling, it's such a powerful medium. I picked up a few I'd been meaning to read and settled into a comfy armchair by the window. The sun was warm on my face, and I could hear the muffled chatter of students studying. It was peaceful, a different kind of peace than the Carnegie Library, but peace nonetheless. Library number 3 was a small, community library tucked away in a residential neighborhood. It was the kind of place where everyone seemed to know each other. The librarian greeted me with a warm smile and asked about my day. We chatted for a few minutes about books, the weather, the local farmers market, just life. It felt like stepping into a small town, even though I was still in the city. I browsed the shelves and found a cookbook filled with handwritten recipes. The handwriting was messy and charming, and some of the recipes had little notes scribbled next to them, like, "Grandma's favorite," or, "Too much salt." It made me smile. It felt so personal. By this point, I was starting to feel the delightful weight of all the books I'd accumulated. My tote bag was practically bursting. But I was on a mission. 2 more libraries to go. The 4th library was a bit of a disaster, if I'm being honest. It was under construction, and half the sections were closed off. The air was thick with the smell of sawdust and paint. I wandered around a bit, feeling slightly lost and confused, but couldn't find anything that caught my eye. Even the usually comforting smell of old books was overpowered by the construction fumes. So, I decided to cut my losses and move on. You win some, you lose some, right? The final library on my list was the children's library. Now, I don't have kids, but I've always loved children's books. The illustrations, the whimsical stories, the sheer imagination, it's intoxicating. And guess what? This library was having a story time. I hesitated for a moment. Would it be weird for a grown woman to attend story time? But then I thought, why not? Life's too short to worry about being a little weird. So, I slipped into the back of the room and sat on a tiny chair designed for a 5-year-old. The librarian, dressed as a pirate, read a story about a mischievous monkey who stole a pirate's hat. The kids were enthralled, shouting out answers and giggling at the funny parts. And you know what? I was enthralled too. I found myself laughing along with them, transported back to my own childhood, when the world felt full of magic and possibility. It was unexpectedly wonderful. After story time, I wandered over to the picture book section. The colors, the textures, it was a feast for the senses. I picked up a beautifully illustrated book about a little girl who befriends a dragon. The artwork was breathtaking. I sat on the floor, surrounded by stacks of picture books, and lost myself in the vibrant images and simple, yet profound, stories. By the time I left the children's library, the sun was setting. I walked back to my car, my arms loaded with books, my heart full. My library hop hadn't gone exactly as planned, but it had been exactly what I needed. It was a reminder of the simple joys in life. The smell of old books, the warmth of the sun on your face, the sound of children's laughter. It was a reminder that adventure can be found in the most unexpected places, even in the quiet corners of a local library. And you know what the best part is? I didn't just find books that day. I found a sense of peace, a spark of joy, a connection to something bigger than myself. It was a reminder that stories have the power to transport us, to connect us, to heal us. And sometimes, all you need is a good book and a quiet place to escape the noise of the world. So, yeah, my library hop. It was a day well spent. Maybe you should try it sometime. You might be surprised at what you discover. Who knows, maybe you'll find your own quiet adventure waiting for you on the shelves of your local library. I certainly did. Hey everyone, learning a new language, especially English, can feel like a huge mountain to climb. But remember this. Learning is a journey, not a destination. Think about it. It's not about reaching some perfect endpoint, but about enjoying every step, every new word, every conversation. It's about progress, not perfection, and that's what makes it so rewarding. Embrace those little victories, because they add up to something amazing. You know what's a really fun and easy way to practice every day? Describing what you see outside, whether you're waiting for the bus, walking your dog, or even just glancing out your kitchen window while cooking. Try narrating the scene out loud. There's a bright red car driving by, the trees are swaying in the wind. I see a little dog chasing a butterfly. It's such a simple exercise, but it helps you build vocabulary and fluency without even realizing it. Honestly, it felt like magic when I first started trying this. Do you also find yourself understanding what others say in English, but hesitate when it's your turn to speak? Starting a conversation with new people can feel a little daunting, I know. It's perfectly normal to feel a bit nervous or unsure of yourself. We've all been there, but remember, every conversation is a chance to learn and grow. And each time you try, you become a little bit more confident and fluent. And you know what? Talking about conversations, it made me think about movies. They are a great way to hear natural English dialogue. The other day, I was watching a classic film, and it struck me how much the language has evolved. It got me wondering, what's your favorite English movie? I'd love to hear your recommendations and maybe even discover some new ones. Let me know in the comments. Okay, so, you know how sometimes you just need to get out of the house? That was me last Saturday. I was feeling stifled. Cabin fever, maybe? It wasn't even cold outside, just one of those gray, overcast days that sort of sucks the energy right out of you. And I'd been staring at my computer screen for, like, days. So, I decided, right, that's it. I'm going exploring. Now, exploring for me usually involves bookshops, but I'd recently cleaned out my local one. Oops. So I thought, why not the markets? We have this amazing network of local markets dotted around, and I hadn't been to any in ages. Honestly, I'd almost forgotten they existed. Talk about a light bulb moment. First stop, the farmer's market. It's just a short bus ride away, but honestly, stepping off felt like entering a different world. The air was buzzing, you know? Not loud, exactly, but alive. People chatting. Stall holders calling out their wares. The rustle of canvas awnings flapping gently in the breeze. A real sensory overload in the best way possible. And the smells. Oh my goodness, the smells. Freshly baked bread, still warm from the oven. Ripe strawberries, so red they almost glowed. Earthy mushrooms, piled high in wicker baskets. I swear, I could have just stood there, eyes closed, inhaling it all for hours. I started with a coffee. Strong, black, from a little van tucked away in the corner. The barista, this lovely woman with bright pink hair, gave me a wink and said, "First time here in a while, love?" Busted, but in a nice way. We chatted for a bit about the market, the weather, life in general. You know, those little conversations that feel so normal, so grounding. Then, the exploration began. I wandered past stalls overflowing with colorful vegetables, hand-knitted scarves, quirky pottery, and homemade jams. I even saw a stall selling miniature cacti in tiny, hand-painted pots. Seriously, the cutest things ever. I almost bought one, then realized I'd probably kill it. Within a week, my track record with plants isn't exactly stellar. I picked up some crusty bread, still warm, a jar of apricot jam that tasted like sunshine, and a huge bag of locally grown spinach. I had absolutely no idea what I was going to do with it, but it looked so vibrant, so alive, that I couldn't resist. Next, it was on to the flea market. This one is a bit further out, so I hopped back on the bus. Now, this market, this is where things get interesting. It's a treasure trove of, well, everything. Old books, vintage clothes, antique furniture, quirky knick-knacks. You name it, they probably have it. And the people. Oh, the characters you meet at a flea market. I overheard snippets of conversations about everything from ancient Egyptian history to the best way to train a parrot. It's a melting pot of personalities, a symphony of human experience. I found myself drawn to a stall piled high with old postcards. Thousands of them, from all over the world. I spent ages sifting through them, imagining the stories behind each one. A faded photograph of a beach in Italy, a handwritten message on the back, dated 1958. A quirky illustration of a Parisian café, the ink slightly smudged with age. Each postcard was a tiny window into the past, a silent testament to lives lived. Guess what? I found one from my hometown, sent decades ago. It was a picture of the old town square, looking remarkably similar to how it looks today. It was so strange, holding this little piece of history in my hand, a connection to the past I never knew existed. I had to buy it. Then, disaster struck. Remember that coffee I bought? Well, I put it down on a table while I was browsing the postcards, and someone knocked it over. All over my new spinach. Talk about bad luck. I was so annoyed, partly with myself for being so careless, partly with the universe for conspiring against me. The stallholder, a kind old man with twinkling eyes, saw my distress and offered me a cloth and a sympathetic smile. It wasn't his fault, but he still apologized. People can be so unexpectedly kind, you know? I salvaged what I could of the spinach, mostly the top layer, thankfully, and decided to call it a day. My bag was heavy, my shoes were hurting, and my spinach was, well, let's just say it had seen better days. But you know what? Despite the coffee-soaked spinach incident, I felt lighter, refreshed, like I'd taken a deep breath of fresh air after being stuck in a stuffy room for too long. The markets had reawakened something in me, a sense of curiosity, a love of the unexpected. The bus ride home was uneventful, but my mind was buzzing. I replayed the day's events, the sights, the sounds, the smells, the conversations. I realized that it wasn't just about the things I'd bought, the bread, the jam, the postcard. It was about the experience itself. The connection with other people, the sense of community, the joy of discovering something new. That evening, as I was making dinner, a surprisingly tasty spinach and feta omelette, by the way, I thought about the pink-haired barista, the kind old man. At the flea market, the stories whispered within the old postcards. And I realized that sometimes, the best adventures are the ones you find right on your doorstep. You just have to open your eyes and look. So, yeah, that's my story. What about you? Any exciting adventures lately? I'd love to hear. Okay, so, you are never going to believe this day I had. I decided, totally spontaneously, to do a little local museum hopping. You know, sometimes you just need a day soaked in culture, right? A little escape from the everyday. I pictured myself, beret perched jauntily on my head, strolling through hushed galleries, contemplating art. Well, let's just say reality was a little different, but wonderfully so. It all started with the history of Buttons Museum. Yes, you heard that right. Buttons. I didn't even know such a place existed. I stumbled across it online, and the sheer absurdity of it intrigued me. I mean, a whole museum dedicated to buttons? What could be there? Rows and rows of beige plastic discs? Turns out, I was so wrong. This place was amazing. It was tucked away on this quaint little side street, in a building that looked like it had been there since, well, buttons were invented. Inside, it was a treasure trove. Antique buttons carved from bone, shimmering pearl buttons, military buttons with tiny regimental crests, even buttons made from nuts and seeds. The curator, a sweet little lady with a twinkle in her eye, told me stories about each one, like they were old friends. Did you know that buttons used to be status symbols? Or that some cultures use them as currency? I was blown away. I spent ages just staring at this one display case full of Victorian glass buttons, each one like a tiny, intricate work of art. They caught the light so beautifully, casting these little rainbows on the wall. Magical, honestly. Next on my list was the Maritime Museum, a complete 180 from the quiet intimacy of the button world. This place was bustling. Kids were running around, excited squeals echoing off the high ceilings. The air smelled faintly of salt and tar, which instantly transported me back to childhood summers spent at the beach. They had this incredible collection of ship models, tiny, perfect replicas of everything from ancient galleys to modern container ships. I could have spent hours just admiring the craftsmanship. And the actual ships, they had a few moored outside that you could explore. I climbed aboard this old fishing trawler, the wood creaking under my feet, the wind whipping through my hair. I pretended I was a seasoned sea captain, charting a course across the open ocean. You know, the usual museum fantasies. Then came lunchtime, and let's just say my refined, art-loving persona took a bit of a nosedive. I'd packed this lovely little picnic, thinking I'd find a charming spot in a park. Well, long story short, I ended up perched precariously on a bench outside a hot dog stand, juggling a leaky container of hummus and a rogue olive that kept rolling away. Not quite the Parisian cafe vibe I was going for. But hey, the hot dog I ended up getting was delicious, so I'm not complaining. Fueled by processed meat and slightly bruised pride, I headed to the Museum of Contemporary Art. Now, I'm not going to pretend I understand all contemporary art. Some of it left me scratching my head, if I'm honest. There was this one installation. It was basically a pile of bricks. Just bricks. I stood there for a good 5 minutes, trying to decipher the hidden meaning, the artistic statement. Nothing. Maybe it was a commentary on the mundane, the solidity of everyday life? Or maybe it was just a pile of bricks. Who knows? But, you know what? Even the pieces I didn't get sparked something in me. They made me think, they made me question, they made me look at things from a different perspective. And that, I think, is the power of art, right? There was one piece, though, that completely captivated me. It was this huge canvas, splashed with vibrant colors that seemed to shift and change depending on where you stood. It felt like looking into a kaleidoscope, a swirling vortex of emotions. I just stood there, mesmerized, lost in the colors and textures. I could have stayed there all day. My last stop was the Science Museum, which turned out to be way more fun than I expected. Remember those school trips to the Science Museum? All those dusty exhibits and boring explanations? This was nothing like that. It was interactive, engaging, and surprisingly hilarious. I ended up in a mock spaceship, attempting, and failing miserably, to dock with a virtual space station. I also got into a heated debate with a 10-year-old about the merits of renewable energy sources. He totally schooled me, by the way. Kids these days, right? They're so smart. By the time I emerged from the Science Museum, it was early evening. My feet were aching, my head was buzzing with new information, and my bag was full of random souvenirs. A button shaped like a tiny teapot, a miniature lighthouse keyring, and a pamphlet about the life cycle of a star. It wasn't the elegant, intellectual day I had envisioned, but it was so much better. It was messy, it was spontaneous, it was full of unexpected delights. And you know what the best part was? Realizing how much beauty and wonder there is right on our doorstep, just waiting to be discovered. We often get so caught up in our daily routines that we forget to explore, to learn, to be curious. But sometimes, all it takes is a day of wandering through dusty museum halls, chatting with passionate curators, and getting schooled by 10-year-olds about renewable energy to remind you just how amazing the world is. So yeah, that was my day of museum hopping. It wasn't exactly what I planned, but it was perfect in its own way. It reminded me to embrace the unexpected, to find joy in the little things, and to never underestimate the power of a good button. You should try it sometime. Just maybe pack a less leaky hummus container. Learned that one the hard way. Anyways, what about you? Any exciting adventures lately? Tell me everything. Well, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for watching and for spending this time with me. It really means the world to have you here. If you'd like to stay connected and catch my new daily content focused on English speaking and listening, please do follow, like, subscribe, and share. It would be wonderful to have you as part of the community. You know, before we go, as I was getting ready to wrap up today, something came to mind. What's one thing you want to accomplish by the end of this week? It's always so lovely to hear what everyone is thinking about, and sharing your goals in the comments is a fantastic way to practice expressing yourself in English and connect with others who are also learning and growing. So please, share away. See you tomorrow, everyone, and remember to take good care of yourselves, stay consistent with your practice, and keep shining.